Welcome into another edition of Gold and Black Radio. I'm your host, Derek Schultz. Purdue men's basketball team got a battle from a perennial Ivy League contender in Yale, but they are through the first quarter of their non-league schedule, a perfect 3-0. But now the real test begins starting Friday with a home game against number 2 and fellow 2024 Final Four member Alabama at Mackey Arena. We're going to talk about that matchup and the impact of Daniel Jacobson's leg injury during today's show with Brian Newbert. But first, a thank you to our sponsors, including Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler up. East End Grill and Ripple and Company, 2 distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. And the Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Joining me now is goldenblack.com columnist Brian Newbert. And I got to admit, Brian, not that I dislike your house. It's a nice place, but it's not as great as joining you live from Mackey Arena. That's a little bit more ambiance there than just, your spare bedroom or wherever you are right now.
It's a little bit more of an appropriate background, yes. But I don't think you're showing the proper respect to my printer.
Or Nova or any of the number of pets that you have in the house either. So I guess there are some good things you've got going in there.
She's not allowed in here.
Too busy barking at the Amazon delivery person. That's all. So far, Purdue. That's right. Yeah, she'll come after you. So far, Purdue, look, 3 games, 3-0. 2 of the 3 have been single-point games late into the second half, and I don't think you would really qualify either of those as close scrapes. Purdue wasn't seriously in, as you put it so eloquently last night on X, they weren't in F around and find out type territory, even though they were kind of sort of getting there against Yale. Is it good for a team like this one to get pushed a little bit here in these early November games rather than be in constant cruise control heading into, frankly, jumping into the deep end coming up here Friday night against a national championship contender in Alabama?
Yeah, but it also kind of depends on what you make of it. If you get better because of it, great. If you start to show self-destructive behavior on a regular basis that puts you in those positions in the first place, then no. Purdue did squander a bunch of possessions when they had opportunities to make sure this wasn't a 6-point game with a couple minutes to go. Mm-hmm. They got to get that out of their system. They've got to get better defensively, first and foremost, but they've got to get some of the sloppy turnovers out of their system. And that's what kind of put them in the position they were in. Credit to Yale. Yale made a lot of tough shots, but none of those shots would have mattered had, Purdue not thrown away a couple of possessions there in the middle of the second half. So it kind of depends on what you make of it. Purdue's got they shouldn't have to learn from it at this point. They've got 3 guys who've played 1 million college basketball games here. But you just have to get better because of it and not put yourself in that position again. The way you and I both so eloquently put it was the Venn diagram of, around and find out. And that's kind of what Purdue was very close to doing there. Again, it was kind of like, whatever the game was earlier, was it Northern Kentucky or the Corpus Christi game? I don't remember. Yeah. That when you kind of let things linger in that 6 to 8 point range, a lot of crazy things can happen. Now, when you're at home, those crazy things tend to happen for you, but there are no guarantees. And, it's a funny sport with a round ball full of air that bounces funny ways. And when you do enough wrong to make sure that a team that can make 3-pointers is within 6 with only a couple minutes left, you're kind of pushing your luck there. And luck isn't always on your side. But, I think Purdue deserves credit, too, for being in that position but responding pretty well. They made all their free throws. They didn't make any mistakes there at the end. They got all the rebounds they needed to get. They made Yale make really tough shots to kind of hang around and extend that game. So I tend to be more positive about them finishing it out than negative about them being in that position in the first place. But I think that they've got to get better because of it. They need to not turn the ball over the way they did.
You mentioned the Corpus Christi game a week ago. Right now, we were talking about Daniel Jacobson's impressive debut, 13-7. I think he had 3 blocks in that game. And then, of course, he breaks his leg Friday against Northern Kentucky and is likely now out for the season. What's the impact of losing a guy like that? And is it a bigger loss than maybe we would have thought back in June or July? Because he seemed to be somewhat, even though, a freshman 7-footer is always pretty raw, but somewhat ahead of schedule.
Well, it's hard to assess the loss because I think what you lost more than what you would have had right now is what you would have had later. Because I think he's a guy who would have really gotten better as the season went on with experience and things like that. And there's no telling what he would have looked like in March. So it's kind of a speculative deal with knowing what Purdue is actually losing in the long run. In the short term, he was kind of 101 on this roster. He's your best shot blocker. He's obviously your biggest guy at the rim. Was a guy who's going to chip in a little bit offensively, but not be a centerpiece for you. But it doesn't help. But I think the areas you lost him from were not positions of strength anyway. I don't think Purdue is going to be a great rim protection team with or without him. I don't think Purdue is going to be a great defensive team with or without him. So it doesn't help in the short term, but I don't think it dramatically transforms Purdue. Where it really hurts is what he would have looked like at the end of February and the start of March. And then just it's setting back his development for next season and onto the future. But no, it certainly doesn't help. But Purdue has enough pieces where I think they can cobble together a little bit of a coalition there at center to get good role player minutes. I think it bears mentioning Will Berg was the guy they picked to start the Creighton game. So he was the guy who got the right of first refusal there in the first place. Caleb First is in there. Raleigh Burgess is going to be in there. Purdue's going to play Trey Kaufman at the 5 some more. You saw that for the first time last night. I think this pushes them in that direction a little bit more too, which I think might end up being a positive thing in the long run if those lineups really work. Not to say there's any positive from a kid getting hurt, but it does kind of force Purdue's hand a little bit from a lineups perspective. So it's one of those rare seasons at Purdue where the center is a role player. Typically, over the last decade or so, the center has been your centerpiece. Now it's a rebound, dunk, screen, and defend position. It's just make everybody else better, do little things to make Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman, and Fletcher Lawyer better. And I don't think that I don't think Daniel Jacobson was going to be, one of Purdue's 4 or 5 best players here in the short term. Now, next season, it's very possible that he could have ascended to that sort of status. Later in the year, he could have pushed the boundaries of that status. But as of right now, I think that he was a guy who was going to fill a role. He was going to have to play through struggles. He was going to have to play through mistakes, and it does just suck for the player and for the team because this was a guy who's got all the upside in the world. And while he may not be what he's going to be eventually right now, he was potentially going to be that in a couple months.
Another speculation question, if you'll allow me, and we'll stick with the big men. What's the ceiling for Will Berg? Like, in your eyes, what would be the best case scenario, even if it's just in the scope of this season, for what you get out of him?
Just kind of what I described, play a functional, essential role, rebound, screen, make most of your dunks, stuff like that. I think he's an important screener in their offense. I think he's a really important rebounder. He's done a good job doing that. He's got to stay out of foul trouble. Anything you get from that position offensively is gravy. Unless it's Trey Kaufman playing there, then it's not gravy. Then it's it's the protein. But if it's Will Berg out there and he gets offensive rebounds, he gets opportunities at the rim that Braden Smith can manufacture, or Fletcher Lawyer can manufacture, or Trey Kaufman can manufacture out of double teams. Great. He needs to make his free throws at a higher rate. But that also might be a situation where he's a guy who's just not going to be a great free throw shooter, but he's also not going to get to the line a ton because you're not going to run a lot of offense through him. But I've always said rebound, dunk, and screen, and you're good. And I think you can say that about him first and Raleigh Burgess as well.
We're talking Boiler Hoops with Brian Newbert of goldenblack.com. This is the Tuesday edition of Golden Black Radio. Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you to the sponsors that make this possible, including Sand Valley Resort. Celebrate all the wilderness provides this fall and winter at Sand Valley. Experience everything from Thanksgiving dinner, curling and ice hockey to ice fishing and snowshoeing, and even the restorative benefits of a guided cold plunge in the frozen lakes. Start planning your next winter getaway by visiting sandvalleypursuits.com and the Purdue Center for Cancer Research as well. The Purdue Center for Institute for Cancer Research has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Purdue brings together world-class Boilermaker scientists from all across the university, conducting cutting-edge research that uncovers new ways to prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. With your support, cancer research saves lives. Join the fight and donate to Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. And, of course, don't forget to sign up if you're not already to become a subscriber for Brian's work and all of the best Purdue coverage at goldenblack.com. Back to last night's game, Brian. You got 30 points from the bench, including some big shots. Cam Heide came in and provided some offense. Miles Colvin's been a real firecracker off the bench for them offensively so far this year. We even saw CJ Cox, who's normally known for the other side of the ball, salted away at the free throw line late. Is last night's effort from the second unit essentially what Matt Painter would want to bottle up moving forward every single night?
Yeah, it was a damn near perfect game for the combination of Camden Heide and Miles Colvin. For those guys to get 11 rebounds off the bench between them, for them to give you the offensive spark they gave you with, I don't know what it was, 18 points on 8 shots or something like that.
Yeah.
They both made big threes. They both sparked you offensively. They both guarded. Miles Colvin's evolution here as a defender has been a very positive development for this team early. Colvin did a good job at times on John Poulikitis. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that's going to be a running joke every time we talk about the Yale game. And just has really, really grown as a player. He looks like a much more complete two-way player than he was before. The consummate sort of 3-and-D player thus far. Now, whether he can maintain that throughout the course of the year, that's obviously the big question. If he does, look out, because he's got every physical tool to be a really good player, a really good defensive player, and obviously he's got all the offensive skill in the world. But both of those guys, played almost best case scenario games. I'm sure it was cathartic for Camden Heide, who Purdue's not going to ask to be a featured scorer, to make those 2 threes. I think Trey Kaufman-Wren moving inside to the 5 there opened up a lane for Camden Heide, whereas before he was kind of a man without a country, caught between 2 positions and not ideal for either necessarily, or stuck behind Trey Kaufman-Wren at 1 and caught in a mix where they want a third ball handler at the other one. So that really worked to his benefit, I think. And coincidence or not, that's when his 3s started going in. But no, I think that was a great game for both of those guys. Again, almost a best case scenario sort of game. And then you obviously mentioned CJ Cox, who, does he look like a freshman? No. He doesn't.
No.
I mean, that was a close college basketball game he was playing in at the end when, Yale was pressing because they were trying to extend the game and keep getting cracks at it. And he was out there to beat the press or to help with the press. And he made his free throws. He made 2 big offensive plays in the second half, a pull-up jumper and a 3-point play where he got a step on his guy, went all the way to the basket. Instead of, a lot of freshmen would dribble that out and just gotten it to one of the veterans or something. And he went right at it, got an end one off of it. And those were big points. And he didn't back away from the moment. And he hasn't done that at any point in time in his young college basketball career to date. That, on top of his defensive value, which is obviously considerable, Purdue stole one here. I mean, we've been saying that from day one here, and he's going to be a really good player for Purdue now and for however long his college career extends here at Purdue.
Last thing here, Brian, while we would, I think, all agree that Yale is plucky, little bit different scenario, struggling defensively against an Ivy League team compared to an Alabama team that can drop 100 right on your head basically whenever they feel like it. How concerned are you with where Purdue is right now as a team defense facing one of the best offenses in the country?
Yeah, a lot. if I were Purdue. And I think it's a situation where even if Purdue defends much better, you'd still be horrified of what Alabama is capable of offensively. That said, Mackey Arena is a really tough place to play, and that building alone is good for a win or two a year. It feels like games like this is a different animal for people coming in, and this is going to be one of the biggest games, biggest non-conference games that's happened at Purdue. And since I think Villanova came in, Duke came in before that. But no, it's Purdue is not even close to where it needs to be defensively to play at the sort of level they've played at in Novembers prior to this. But Purdue has also been very capable of outscoring people. A lot would have to go right for that to happen against Alabama. You'd need, I think, Alabama to, not do from three-point range what they did in Toronto last year, obviously, which was kind of an outlier sort of game. You don't expect anybody to come in and make 19 threes in Mackey Arena. It's not to say it's not possible, but Purdue's got to be really good Friday. Alabama keeps coming at you. Their backups are all really good. They got a lot of shooters. Mark Sears is maybe the best guard in the country. Don't tell Braden Smith I said that. They're just loaded, and they're really good offensively, and they play really fast, and they play really smart offensively. And Purdue's gonna have its work cut out for it on Friday. And I think fans who are used to Purdue running the table in November every single year and winning every non-conference game they play are going to have to set their jaws here a little bit for Purdue to lose some games this year, because it's very possible, and it's very likely. And Friday could very easily be one of those games.
Yeah, and Purdue, established as a good team. I think everybody thinks, big pick to win the Big Ten, the whole deal. But this Alabama team is viewed as a legitimate national title contender on that first tier. So if Purdue's able to get a win, and the message that it would send moving forward, I think would be a crucially important one, even though we're barely halfway through November at this point. But it'll be a 7:00 tip at Mackey. Should be a fun environment. And of course, Brian will be there and have the coverage for you right here on goldandblack.com. But we'll next talk to you coming up here for Friday's show before they even tip off. So we'll get some more insights into the Boilers and Crimson Tide coming up here in a couple of days. Thanks so much, man. That's our pal Brian Newbert. Didn't even have time to talk Colts Jets with him. Maybe we'll fit that in coming up on Friday's show. And that's our Tuesday edition of the program today. Wanted to give a final shout out and thank you to all of our great sponsors that make Gold and Black Radio possible, including Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans, East End Grill and Ripple & Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette. The Whitaker Inn, this Midwestern oasis, perfect for a relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. Sand Valley Resort, celebrate all the wilderness provides this fall and winter at Sand Valley. Start planning your next winter getaway by visiting sandvalleypursuits.com. And the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research. The Purdue Institute for Cancer Research has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. And goldandblack.com, I tell you, over and over and over again, Knucklehead Central, this show, all of the great coverage, football-wise from Tom Dienart and Carm, also basketball-wise from Brian Newbert, anything history, anything just Purdue athletics in general from our pal Alan Karpick. You get it all at goldandblack.com. Become a subscriber today. We will next see you in a couple of days on Gold and Black Radio Friday edition, where we'll talk about not only Purdue's big matchup with Alabama, but football taking on Penn State at Ross-Ade Stadium. But until next time, I'm Derek Schultz. I hope you enjoyed it. This has been Gold and Black Radio Tuesday edition right here at goldandblack.com.